I was an 11-year-old boy when I heard on the radio that they shot Jack Kennedy.
Mhm.
I was in a communist country then, behind the Iron Curtain, growing up under the full communist indoctrination. I was growing up with a father who was afraid to say things in front of me because he wasn't sure that I wouldn't rat him out at school. My mom went through the concentration camp experience. Her background's Jewish. Out of the 55 immediate relatives that went in, two came back.
Well,
So I have some of the trauma in me and some of the toxicity and some of the genetics. It's kind of interesting. She survived probably because she was hypothyroid. Hypothyroid people have low energy consumption. They can survive on much fewer calories than others. So
mm.
I'm thinking famines and experiments like the concentration camps would pre-sort people for the MTHFR and hypothyroidism, all of which I have.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to ALLSMITH, where we dive deep into mindset, wellness, and resilience that shape extraordinary lives. Today, I'm honored to sit down with Martin Pytela, a holistic health coach, wellness pioneer, and a living testament to the power of healing. His journey is nothing short of incredible. After suffering from debilitating mercury poisoning that left conventional doctors stumped, he took his health into his own hands, unlocking the secrets of cellular detox, bioenergetic healing, and true holistic wellness. His story is one of perseverance, self experimentation, and a commitment to helping others reclaim their health naturally. Martin, welcome to the show, man.
Yep, look forward to our conversation. Happy to be here.
Very cool to connect with you, man. We've chatted a little bit offline, and I'm just really excited to understand where your journey began. But before we do, I want to create some relatability for people. And so something that's been floating to the surface for me that I've been wanting to ask you for a few weeks now is, what are some of the common misconceptions about nutrition that prevent people from feeling their best? Because there's so many fad diets out there. There's so many different nuanced things within the
Right.
nutritional sphere that I was like, you know what? We need to kind of cut through the bullshit and provide some clarity for people.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, nutrition. Good question. So think of it this way: we have evolved in a terrain, in an environment that was devoid of the industrial age stuff, which will include petroleum and mineral mining and all of that. All stuff up to maybe 500 years ago was just whatever nature served us. We would we were first hunters, and you can trace that through the blood types. The blood type O, that's the hunters, and then we got into agriculture. The blood type A's got into agriculture, and then the blood type B's are mostly the Mediterranean, the Jewish, Arabic, those. And then you have the AB, which is really exotic stuff.
Mm,
Anyway, the general idea is that if you're born 500 years ago, someplace, pick a place, Switzerland, you are going to be eating the Swiss food, and you're going to be living your entire life within maybe 10, 20 miles of where you started.
mm,
Only few people traveled. So the Swiss model, they will feed you rye bread, aged cheese, sauerkraut. In summer, you have vegetables. On Sundays, they'll kill the chicken. And in the winter, in February, they'll butcher the pig. No
mm,
refrigeration, right?
mhm,
Now, transfer this, like put somebody in North Africa, like a Bedouin village. Dates, figs, pomegranates, camel milk, carb on carb on carb on carb. Now move somebody to Norway, north of 60. Short days, long nights, in the winter. Even the growing season's compressed into 90 days. So they would eat dried cod, fresh caught salmon. They would hunt for reindeer. They would ferment things to store over winter. They would dry things, but they would rely highly on proteins. So a kid is born into a family and gets, after he is weaned, he gets to eat the local food. So if your genetics match the inputs, then you do pretty well. But if they're a mismatch, you are weak. You don't thrive. And the next infection that comes through the village is probably going to kill you off. And it was a common experience for a woman to give birth to maybe a dozen or more and only see four of them grow up
Oh, wow.
to reproduction. The attrition was so bad. In Roman times, they did not name infants until they were 2 years old. They didn't
Oh,
even
wow. 'Cause
bother.
they thought they were going to die before that.
Yeah,
Wow.
attrition.
It's so
Yeah.
interesting, like your observation around historical reference, how our genetics are so important environmentally to the foods that are going to allow us to thrive. And I think
Hmm.
that's something that, is very challenging because you need, some sort of genetic mapping or to kind of
Yeah,
trace your history backwards in order to kind of understand who you are and where you came from.
yeah, yeah. So then you introduce the sailing ships, right? 1400 something, 1500 something, and all of a sudden people start moving to America from all corners. And now you're mating a Norwegian with a Cherokee, and you bring in some Equatorial African into the mix it with Polish and Irish. It's all over the place. So all of a sudden, we now have these mixed races, and it's not really obvious what comes up to the surface. And so the metabolic typing that I practice asks people about 120 multiple choice questions. And at the end of the questionnaire, we're able to come back at you with what's your dominance in the oxidation, how you oxidize lipids, fats, or carbs, what's your dominance, and also, well, the endocrine dominance dictates how you gain weight or lose weight, which
Mm.
is kind of mysterious to many people, but it's actually highly predictable.
Oh, wow.
And the other thing is how you alkalize or acidify. And very much like being a left handed or right handed, you can be dominant in the oxidizer. We have labels for it. The oxidizer is alkalized by fats and proteins and acidified by starches. And the autonomic is the other way around. So, what that means is this. And a person that drifts toward alkalinity is really pleasant, artsy, jovial, emotionally stable. But the more alkalinity, they become despondent. Well, first of all, first they start procrastination. That's their standard response. Not very urgent about anything. And then procrastination, and then despondence, and then depression.
Mm.
That's the dark side of being too alkaline.
Mm. How would somebody know that? Like, what information could they take in? Just look how they're feeling and then assume, okay, and then what would the correct behavior be?
You're on the alkaline side of things.
Mhm.
Now let me talk to you like an acidic guy, like I really want to get something done right now, right the heck now. Elbows up, cut into traffic, get out of my way, I'll do it myself.
Mhm.
That's the acidic mode of operating.
Got it.
Now, if you overdo it, you end up with road rage, or you may end up, well, that's external, right? Like anger at others. Or if you turn it inward, then you'll have anxiety. You'll have either reliving your past, thinking that you should have done something differently or shouldn't have done something at all, or you'll have catastrophizing the future, just imagining just what all could possibly go wrong. These are people not living in the now. These are people living either in the far forward or far backward.
How much does mindset play a role in this? Because you're describing it as either alkaline or overly acidic.
Hmm?
How much does mindset play a role into the factors of some of the
Yeah.
experiences and the feelings that people are coming toe to toe with?
Yeah. Well, mind over matter always, right? Like you can totally override anything that's going on within with your ability to just get over it or get above it.
Does that mean
But
that your mind can kind of make you more alkaline or more acidic?
no, I think not. I think your physiology is more acidic, but you can learn to take deep breaths and just learn with it and eat the foods that will slow you down because you'll figure it out.
Hmm. Is that something that you have, strategic lists or like a T chart for people to be more acidic or more alkaline? Or
Yeah,
is it something that
absolutely.
you recommend people kind of tinker with via trial and error?
Well, you can set up a quick little experiment, give yourself a carbo challenge and a fat protein challenge, and watch how you respond physiologically.
Hmm.
And so the carbo challenge, that would be, I don't know, the bowl of porridge with maybe a banana on top, and I follow it up with a glass of juice,
Yeah.
orange juice,
Yeah.
like carb on top of carb on top of carb,
Yeah.
a
Super
handful of
sugar.
dates followed by a fistful of figs, right?
Yeah, that'll get you for sure. And then the other side would be some sort of
Have an
carnivore.
omelet. Have an
Yeah.
omelet with 2 pieces of bacon or 2 pieces of sausage and some salad with lots of olive oil on top.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting to hear like, these two ends and just creating a metaphor and painting a picture for people. We just had Dr. Sean Baker on the show, and he's the author of The Carnivore Diet. And we've heard Jordan Peterson talk about it. We've heard so many people talk about, the beauty of a limited ingredient style nutrition plan,
Hmm.
integrating things that are high nutrient density. And
Hmm.
also, fats and red meat have been bastardized for years by so many people within, the CDC, the FDA,
Yeah.
and there's just a little bit of lack of clarity
Yeah.
there. And so my
Well,
question for
okay.
you, go ahead.
Yeah, let's unpack that. So, visualize a space like on a page, for example. So this would be like this. So, up top, those are the autonomics, and they are alkalized by carbs. Alkalinity along this side, acidity along this side. The oxidizers are the other way around. So, if you wake up overly acidic as an autonomic dominant, we'll call you a sympathetic dominant. If you eat fats, you will actually get even more acidic and you will drift way out of the picture into anxiety.
Mm,
So you are a good candidate for carbs to calm you down. So fruits for breakfast or cereal for breakfast. Now I don't really mean the cereal as we serve it now. Nobody, I mean nobody should eat refined sugar, refined flour, refined salt, refined seed oils, plant seed oils, and pasteurized, homogenized dairy. Like that should be off the deck for everyone. But okay, so I have the sympathetic. If I feed him a high protein, high fat breakfast, I'm actually going to make him completely out of control anxious. On the other hand, if you wake up, same body type, but waking up on the alkaline side, that's known as the parasympathetic. Now, if you feed carbs to that person, you make them depressed. They will get nothing done that day. You need to feed them high protein, high fat breakfast because that's how you get them toward more activity.
hmm.
Now, in the oxidizers, so the fast oxidizer wakes up acidic, and the way you calm him down is you feed him fats and proteins. If you feed him carbs, you make him go crazy, nervous, ADD,
Hmm.
hostile, unpleasant, just asshole people.
Yeah. How does somebody take an inventory for this? Like, how can someone determine their metabolic type and what signs
Yeah,
indicate that they
right.
might be eating against it?
Well, I mean, I just mentioned the two challenges, right? Carbo challenge and fat protein challenge. You give yourself one of each and you observe if this happens within an hour, right? Like an hour after you eat, the effect is up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's immediate. And, well, take notes. Some people are more stable, some people are less stable. Some are, it takes a hammer to take them out of balance. The others are easier to push out of balance. So it depends. But still, everybody will notice. Let's do an example. I'll invite a whole bunch of people to a party, like a corporate party where drinks are served and hors d'oeuvres are served. And these are tiny little pieces of bread with cheese and whatever, and pieces of cake and you name it, carby snacks. So we'll be serving alcohol and carby snacks. And the oxidizers are going to become more and more acidic as they go. After the first drink, they just get louder. After the second one, they get argumentative. After the third one, they get awful, ugly, just no breaks. And if they keep going, they'll probably pick a fight. The autonomics, after the first drink, they will just go really pleasant, jovial, less limitations, more open. After the second drink, they will start oversharing. They will say stuff that they wish they didn't. They'll tell secrets that they shouldn't have said. After the third one, they'll probably be crying, emotional about something, just falling to pieces. And on the fourth drink, they'll be falling asleep. So interestingly, the autonomics, they will never become dangerous drunks. They'll just sleep it off and wake up. The oxidizers, on the other hand, they can't sleep. The more they drink, the worse they feel, but the less they're able to shut it down.
Mm.
So there's your analysis. Now we also have the test. I mentioned that we have this 120 questionnaire that if you fill it out, I'll tell you pretty much without any hesitation which type you are and what you should be doing to make yourself more stable. Because in the middle, you have more flexibility. You have emotional stability. You have just life under control.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you are in one of the extremes, you're either anxious or depressed. Take a pick, right?
No, it's really cool to hear. How does, I'm very curious into the realm of mindset associated with this and how it impacts physical health. What do you believe are some simple practices to shift people from this diseased focused mindset to a more healing focused mindset?
Right. Yeah, okay. So the autonomic nervous system is one of the two dominances, and it has two branches.
Can you define that for people that maybe aren't familiar with that phrasing, the autonomic nervous system?
Okay, yeah. It has two branches, sympathetic, parasympathetic, or fight or flight, rest, repair, digest. It controls most of the things that you normally don't think about, like the rate of breathing, your blood pressure, your hunger, your the stuff that does not involve picking something up or talking or decisions, whatever.
Just
Stuff you do without,
unconscious.
again?
The unconscious.
Yeah. The automatic. It used to be called the automatic nervous system. Later,
Okay.
autonomic as an independent of you. It just works. Anyway, so if you put yourself into the fight or flight, stress, several things happen. Your blood pressure goes up, your digestion shuts down, your body's not repairing itself. It's focusing on immediate preservation of your existence. All resources shunted toward either getting away from an attack or overcoming the danger somehow. And it's usually physical, right? Back when it was a fight. like with either other humans or maybe the saber-toothed tiger. I don't know what it would have been.
Totally.
And then when it's over, you're supposed to shut it down and relax. Blood pressure goes down, digestion resumes, and repairs commence. So, for example, sleep is really fitful and unproductive if you are too sympathetic. If you're stuck in the fight or flight, you don't get to repair much and you wake up unrested.
Which is probably where most people hang out because of elevated cortisol, anxiety, hustle culture. More is better. Let's make more money. I'm not enough. So most people are probably in that realm.
Right. Yeah. I mean, let's just imagine a drive from home to work. You get up a little late, so you're rushing. So now you are in full mode where you're having to do 360-degree awareness. You're watching for dangers as you're driving. You arrive at work, stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then problems start coming at you, and emails and alarms and appointments. And then you're not in France where you would take 2 hours to do a lunch and relax.
Totally. It's just
Right?
an interesting dichotomy, right? Like when you look at rest and digest, it's almost perceived as lazy culture in comparison to the narrative that's being portrayed in the world now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so necessary. Like they definitely play off of each other.
Yeah.
But there's negatives to
Yeah.
both. There's levels to both.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
rest and digest is typically what we see with sadness, with grief, with injuries, with loss of a job, negative things taking place. And so then you get into this spiral of inactivity and the nervous system starts to shut down into almost a freeze mode.
No. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful words. We humans are dynamic balance creatures, the yin and the yang of it, centripetal, centrifugal. Inhale, exhale. I can inhale, but I cannot keep on inhaling. I would blow out. So I cannot keep exhaling. I would collapse. I have to ingest food, but I cannot hang on to it. I have to excrete whatever is left over, and on and on. Heartbeat. Squeeze, relax. Squeeze, relax. Muscles. Shorten the bicep, but lengthen the tricep at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Right? So the balances, yeah, you mentioned the repairs. If you don't repair, I heard a guy say, "Oh yeah, I'll rest when I'm in the grave." That's one of the stupidest statements, right? Because you'll be in the grave way sooner because you will wear out. Like if you drive your fleet of pickups without changing the oil and without checking the tires and without fixing this and that, you'll wear out the entire fleet much sooner than someone who'll take care of the equipment,
Mm-hmm.
lubricate and refuel and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we humans are similar in that, right? If you abuse 24 pickups, they will fail in various ways. One will lose a head gasket, one will lose a differential, one will lose the I don't know something in the idle arm or whatever the heck it's called in the suspension and so on. Various parts will fail first.
No, totally. I love the way you're speaking about all these concepts. Like we definitely are all gas, no brakes most of the time. And what's
Yeah,
interesting is that I don't think it was always that way. Like, you mentioned hunting and gathering. And
yeah,
then you also think about, the sleep association. There's some people that are genetically wired to wake up to hunt and gather. And there's some people that are designed to provide and protect and kind of stay up a little bit later and protect the tribe and be around the
hmm,
campfire, that may be a little bit more night owls. But our society creates these narratives that, like, you got to wake up at 5, you got to do your morning routine, you got to do your cold plunge, you got to do all these like morning routine things. And I think a lot of this hustle culture is like getting worn out and overdone. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it came about around the onset of agriculture, which you alluded to earlier,
Hmm.
because that was when we started seeing mass production of food, the monetization of things, trying to kill pesticides. So now we're spraying things on our foods. We're trying to inject antibiotics and things in our meats, our cattle, our fish, in order to fatten them up for mass production. So it
Hmm.
looks bigger. Then we're using food dyes to make it look a certain color, in conjunction with, some sort of
Right.
salt or some sort of preservative for transport. And it's a downward spiral that has monetized immensely, probably been great for the economy,
Yeah.
but has completely kind of missed the point on nutrition being this healing modality. And
Yeah.
now we're overly reliant on big pharma, which maybe that was the goal. Maybe that was planned early on. I want to believe that it's not, but what do I know?
Well, let's start with that. I think it's a lucky break in that sense that, well, let's start with this. What are we optimizing for? Right. If we're optimizing for the visual appeal and the durability on the shelf, then it's a different thing from if we're optimizing for nutritional density or nutritional value.
Well said.
Right. So yeah, the tomato that is picked off of my tomato plant that I have on my deck that I'm growing myself, and I'm picking it ripe, is going to taste and feel very different from the variety that's grown to last through the transport, be firm. It's not judged by the smell, it's judged by the look. It's not judged by the taste, it's judged by how long it lasts on the shelf. Yeah. Totally different priorities. And so likewise the guys in the grocery business, they're optimizing for low loss foods. They want something that's going to be shelf stable long enough or much longer than otherwise. Like when I was a kid, I grew up in Czechoslovakia and born in the 50s. So I remember the 50s and 60s. Back then, I lived in a village. My dad was a veterinarian. We we lived really close to where the food was made. We ate hunted food. Frequently, we had hares and pheasants and wild boar and you name it. We ate food that actually was hunted, and then even the food that was raised in the village that was still very fresh, so to speak, and small scale. Right, we did not see large scale farming.
No, totally. That's very interesting.
Anyway, the point I wanted to make a point about the quality of things, and the main point I wanted to make was the beer, which was beer would go bad within 10 days of being on the shelf. It was not pasteurized. So the same beer that is from back there, I can now buy in America, but it's been pasteurized. It doesn't taste anything like the local stuff that's not.
Mm-hmm.
Just as an example, right? The
No,
fresh,
totally.
the fresh food that's not stable. Like we would buy bread every second day because it would just go bad. We would buy pastries, like I don't know what you'd call it. I guess the equivalent of a baguette, to give an example,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be hard by the evening.
Yeah,
Milk
totally.
would milk would spoil by tomorrow.
And now it's all about commercialism and monetization for elongated shelf life for profit.
Right.
But what I'm curious around here is like so much of the human experience, in my opinion, is made up. Like we live in this game where it's like we've created things like time and time blocks. We've
Yeah.
created things like agriculture for mass production. We've
Yeah.
created fad diets and all these things that like
Yeah.
work. We talk about all the different crazes within fitness.
Yeah.
And the underlying issue that I see is that people are just fucking lazy. They're not disciplined. So they're looking for all these things to try to like hack and cut the corners. Like, how do you get better at time blocking? Just shut off all the notifications and be focused in the thing. How do you get better at nutrition? Eat real food that doesn't have 75 ingredients or elongated shelf life. And you can get into the nuance of all of that. And then how do you get better at fitness? Push, pull, squat, hinge, do it consistently, integrate some monostructural things, carry some things sometimes. It's like, okay, let's just start there. Let's just say that's the thing. Sleep 8 hours a day, treat people appropriately, try to get as much hydration as you can with a little bit of salt and electrolytes. Have sex and sleep as often as you can without getting fired, safely, of course.
Yeah.
And it's like that to me is like the big pillars. Those are the rocks. But everybody wants to step over the $100 bills to pick up the pennies. They want to know the specificity of this or the hack of that or what bioengineered thing of this or the new biohacking of like how much should I sauna and cold plunge? What's the exact temperature for how long? It's like shut the fuck up. Let's just do the honest things first. Are you exercising 3 to 4 days a week? Are you lifting? Are you simulating a hunter or gatherer response? Are you eating real food? Are you hydrating? Like these are things that I could go on forever about. And I'm curious your thoughts because I'm sure you get all the questions about the nuance and it just dismisses the simplicity of the big pillars.
Right. You're highlighting some really interesting questions, which is actually related to something we do help people with the metabolic typing, which is this. We come up with endocrine dominants, of which we recognize 3 for men, an extra one for women, and that would be thyroid, adrenal, and pituitary. And depending on which one is dominant in the body, you will have different physique. So let's talk about the metabolic types, of which we have 3 in men, an extra one in women: thyroid, adrenal, pituitary, and they're different in how they prefer to eat food. For example, the thyroid types should be eating 3 meals about equal size, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and protein with each. And the adrenals, they do best when they don't get breakfast or tiny or zero breakfast, light lunch, big dinner. The pituitary, completely different. Big breakfast, no dinner.
Mm.
And the temptation food for the thyroid types is carbohydrate, for the adrenal types is savory, and for the pituitary types is creamy, like ice cream, whipping cream, yogurt.
Mm.
And the pituitary types, they tend to be the intellectual type, the nerd. The head's bigger than what you would expect for the body size. Hair's usually curly. They're elegant, but clumsy. They are, if they're gaining weight, it's all over the body, kind of like Doughboy, Pillsbury Doughboy, or Cabbage Patch Doll kind of thing in gals. And interestingly, their health food is organ meats, the hunter stuff. The tongue, heart, liver, kidney, that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all need some of it, right? But they really need it.
Yeah.
And the thyroid types, they don't do well on red meat at all. They do better on light stuff like eggs and fish and lighter things. But interestingly, so for example, the thyroid type will gain weight on starch and lose weight on fats and proteins. So to a thyroid type, the keto diet is a slimming diet. But the adrenal type is exactly the other way around. To him, fat is gain food, and they'll just keep on gaining weight if you put them on a keto diet.
Mm.
And yet, the thyroid types are short duration. For them, the best form of exercise would be interval training.
Mm-hmm.
They would do best when they do like 10 reps and rest and 10 reps and rest.
Mm-hmm.
The adrenal types, they're phenomenal. They're like draft horses. They can take 8 hours of physical endurance work, carry on, no big deal. So you highlighted a whole of these different things, right? People chasing this style and that style, this diet and that diet. Well, they all are valid for some people
Hmm.
and not for others. And that's the hard thing to know ahead of time.
The Trident family taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good, bad, and everything in between. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. I start my day with the Sweet Cream Cold Brew as I am prepping my mind and body for fitness, service, coaching, and podcasting. With various locations in San Diego, they offer over 14 nitro cold brews and a variety of specialty drinks. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from the Keto Bakery. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code ALLSMITH to take your coffee experience to the next level. For sure. Based on a lot of what you're saying, it sounds like there is a specialized approach, which I definitely honor. But I also want to provide a little bit of pushback here and understand, like, what's the secret to creating compliance? Because I feel like most people are either running from pain or in pursuit of pleasure. And
Yeah.
so people typically come to you when their inflammatory markers or their performance or their health is so bad that they need help,
Yep.
or they're in pursuit of like wanting to optimize, wanting to get better, and they have the
Mm-hmm.
financial wherewithal and the time,
Mm-hmm.
emotion to
Mm-hmm.
strive to be compliant. It could be the energy and the passion of the moment, but I truly believe that like the program that works, whether that's mental, physical, or emotional or nutritional, is the program that you actually do. And in this modern day, how many people are actually compliant for the appropriate duration to accumulate results before they're like, this isn't for me, I'm going to jump to the next thing?
Yeah. Well, you just demonstrated a short response that's from the stress side of things, right?
Mhm.
And so here's the worst of it. Wi-Fi, especially the shorter the way, the more it is so. So the 5G is worse than 4G, which is worse than 3G, and so on.
Mhm.
It's called voltage gated calcium channel. As the millimeter waves address your body or interact with your body, they're stimulating a calcium release into your cells.
Mm.
Calcium is the signaling molecule for the fight or flight, the stress. So you're constantly reminded to be stressed, constantly reminded to be vigilant, constantly reminded that there is some danger. Like I have people who are more sensitive as they're driving toward the smart grid downtown, a sense of doom and anxiety is rising in their body. So just living in the world of cell phones and Wi-Fi is making things worse. It's less easy, especially for people who are dominant in that side, to stay relaxed. So that's one. Two, the culture of accomplishment, right? Do, as opposed to a human being. You treated yourself like as a human doing. How do we teach a pause? How do we teach a person? Well, we send them to Himalayas to meet with some monks and say, go find yourself some. Would that work? Right? Stop chasing a bigger house. I mean, you've said that just a moment ago. You gave wonderful examples of all of the things that we are driven to do instead of accomplishing peace, right? Accomplishing lengthy life. Lengthy life is really the parasympathetic, the relaxed, the repairs ongoing. Well, so I don't know. Do you want to talk about the tools that a person should learn about how to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also just want to point out that you're spot on. The romanticization around hustle and do culture, it gets validated. You
Hmm.
get loved for production, you get
Yeah.
loved for more capacity. But then behind closed doors, a lot of people that I observe that are doing some amazing things. I mean, let's just use Steve Jobs as an example. Pancreatic cancer. He passed away at 57. Right.
Right.
So it's like, we
Well,
tell all these beautiful stories, but to me, yes, he was innovative. He did some really cool.
yeah. Let
That's a
me
tough
butt into
thing to
this.
accept.
Yeah, let me butt into this about the following. When he was a younger man, he had the idea that fruitarian was the way to go.
What's that mean?
Fruitarian is a person who eats only fruit.
Oh, got it.
So he probably spent several years eating apples and bananas or whatever else, right?
Hmm.
Which is a horrible thing for the person who doesn't have the genetics for it.
Yeah.
If you are North African Bedouin who is genetically pre-selected for fruit eating, you're good.
Yeah.
But fructose is digested only in the liver, nowhere else. And so if you overdo fructose, as a, I don't know, European background somebody, I imagine Steve Jobs was, I don't know. I don't know his genetics, but he looked European. And he ended up blowing out his liver and his pancreas in his young days by this ideology of fruitarianism.
Hmm.
It works for somebody who's born in the tropics and 25 generations of his ancestors lived on tropical fruit.
Hmm.
But it's horrendous for somebody whose ancestors did not live like that.
No, totally. I
Anyway,
think,
so
like you
that's
said,
me pointing
one
at
more
Steve
thing
Jobs.
I want to point out though is just the concept of like, what's the ultimate goal, right? Like, because you could also say on one end of the spectrum, this fruitarian diet was beneficial for him. It allowed his mind to be optimized. Maybe it was some sort of nootropic for innovation. Maybe he was lucky at the right place at the right time. You could play both ends of that spectrum or both sides of that coin. But like you said, like, case dependent on the goal, would you say the majority of people that you work with, their goal is longer life, more sustainable life, or would you say it's peace? Like, what seems to be the tangible goal that people are after?
Yeah. Yeah, it's way easier to find people in pain who want to be out of pain than it is people who realize that pain is coming and they might want to learn how to avoid it.
Hmm.
It's sort of like selling umbrellas on a sunny day, right?
Yeah.
Or the the preacher called people in and says, "Let's all come into the church and pray for rain." And nobody brought umbrellas. You know, the whole system of not not really knowing what's coming if you don't take care of it.
Yeah.
I mean, you had that wonderful gift from your father. Gift. He actually showed you what it looks like when somebody dies early, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, that really must have brought it into your awareness way more than any other guy
Yeah,
your
and
age.
also like it also unlocked some things, and part of the reason why I wanted to chat with you is that like he grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, and later Caldwell, Idaho, and we always did a protein, some sort of starch, whether it be potatoes or rice or squash,
Yeah,
and then some sort of vegetable. On special occasions, we had dessert, but for the most part, we did not. And he seemingly is British and Eastern European descent. I think my mom's probably relatively similar, something in there. But more importantly, when I observed the treatment in the hospital, it's exactly what you just said. Getting a tumor removed from the brain the size of a softball, you're going to be in some pretty excruciating pain once you're in your middle 70s. So obviously what's going to happen, you're going to get different forms of morphine, Dilaudid, eventually Tylenol. At that time, marijuana was not really used. There wasn't any sort of like
Yeah.
alternative medicines that were used in that space. And if there
Yeah.
were, they weren't covered by Medicare. So
Yeah.
then as a byproduct, a short-staffed hospital is, then over-prescribing because they don't have the time or the bandwidth to see all the different patients. They can also bill health insurances so they can get a return on their investment into their schooling and their medical debts. That's both the doctors and, the nurses and the nurse practitioners and the
Yeah.
physician assistants. And as you can see, the picture I'm painting is it becomes a systemic issue to allude and relate to what you just said, where people are married to get me out of pain, which is reactive medicine
Yeah.
that they can physically see and feel. There's a tangible component that creates a stack of evidence that it exists. What people don't do is proactively invest time, energy, emotion, and finances into preventative medicine,
Yep.
knowing very well that all of us are going to die one day and that we're going to experience pain along the way. But because we can't see it, can't feel it, and can't totally conceptualize it tangibly, it ends up being an industry that feels like it's in the clouds. People are like, why should I invest in that? These people maybe were a painter one day and then decided to go be a personal trainer or whatever thing over here. So it creates this push and pull within the health relationship of preventative medicine and reactive medicine. And I'd love to say, I'm all for education, all those things, but based on the sickness of what I'm observing in the world, it's not working. And like, what's the clearest definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Well, yeah, you're again hitting about 20 different points all at the same time. Let's start with this. Back when China, 3,000 years ago, a physician was paid a monthly fee so long as his patient was healthy. As soon as the patient got sick, the payments stopped. So, what was the doctor motivated to do? He was motivated to steer his patient toward health. Now, if we had this going, it would call for central kind of thing like government. The nation decides that its goal is to have healthy population. It's possible to set it up that way.
Mhm.
And we would incentivize people to stay healthy. So as long as your blood markers were staying right, like low homocysteine, low belly fat, this, that, muscle mass, this, and there are markers. We can see them. Like when you go to a blood test for your life insurance, they see what's going on. Anyway, if we could do the opposite of the life insurance and denying you life insurance when we know that you're a horrible risk because you made yourself sick, if we started early on and be reporting and be giving you incentives to do the right thing, I think we could change the way things are done.
I totally agree. And I like the terminology that you use there. Not, I got sick. It's, you made yourself sick. That creates an ownership and accountability for the choices that led up into that point in time.
Yeah.
And obviously you have to take into consideration exposure. There are variables that are outside of our control. So I
Yeah.
definitely hold compassion and empathy and understanding for that. But I love what you said there with that phrasing of make
Yeah.
yourself sick. I think it's important to note that.
Yeah. And you just said something that just triggers me to say, well, the way we set up this capitalism as we know it is that the corporation is allowed to internalize profit and externalize the cost. Meaning
Mhm.
this, they can extract something from the ground while polluting the river, or they can, why are the plastic makers not responsible for what happens with the plastic after it's used? Why is it okay to let it wash down into the ocean and destroy the environment? Why is it okay for I don't know, a human in the United States these days eat about a credit card's worth of weight in plastic every week? Stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
And
totally. It's a really
it's
good
the
observation.
it's the plunderer mindset. Right? You come here, you extract whatever you want out of nature and leave it to take care of itself.
Yeah.
And that's not going to lead to a very long-term existence for us, for humans.
Not at all.
I don't know if you've heard it, but it's said that we have maybe 45 crops left using the methods that we are using on the soils as we know them.
Wow. What do you think is what do you think is the solution there? Right? Like we've already integrated this world where plastics, served as a purpose early on. They got the job done for transport, for packaging, for efficiency of carrying products from point A to point B. So it's like we originally had all these great food products that were natural and holistic and healthy and nutrient dense, but they were limited to the environment, as you mentioned. So then, whether it was for capitalism or whether it was for sharing purposes or whatever the original ideation was, the problem that was at hand was how do we get it from point A to point B? Okay, how do we get it further? How do we get into the
Yeah,
hands of people across this ocean?
yeah,
Plastics worked for a long time and we didn't know what we didn't know. And now we're realizing, oh wow, this is a big problem. We need to figure out a solution here.
right. Well, I think it's the priorities, right? What are we watching for? In management consulting, we always say what is measured gets done. So with the plastics, we would probably want to make sure that the consumer that gets the plastic in their hand is somehow obligated and incentivized to do the right thing, which is not to toss it, not to have it end up in a creek, washed down into the river, washed down into the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
where it gets eaten by an albatross. And I don't know if you have you ever seen the pictures from Midway Island?
I haven't, but I think you're alluding to all the microplastics that are in fish.
Fish and birds, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you see the carcass of the bird, the feathers and the bones, and a pile of plastic that was in
Wow.
his belly when he died.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's sad, man. I
yeah,
want to go back to what you said around everything that's measured gets done because there's some lack of clarity there. And I would say is one of my favorite quotes within the human experience, and that is everything that's measured isn't always counted. Everything that counts isn't always measured. And going back to our understanding of the spectrum of anxiety and depression associated with our dietary um, our dietary necessities, I guess, based on our environment and our genetic predisposition. From my understanding, when I've observed anxiety and depression, it's pretty difficult to measure that. You're observing human experience, you're seeing behaviors, but like what I've seen in a doctor's office is a series of relatively subjective questions or like happy faces that are then used to determine. And it is difficult to kind of conceptualize that and feel that as raw data because it's like, what's the incentive on the other side? If somebody says they have these symptoms and they work for the military, well, now they're getting all this disability and this huge return on investment by exiting their current occupation and they're getting paid out for the rest of their life. So it's like, do they really experience that? Or is that something that they're trying to reap benefits based on the incentive model? And then you could look at the human experience of like, okay, maybe a job pays for certain things and they're trying to get time off work. Is that burnout? Is that laziness? Is that taking advantage of the system? These are things that are very difficult to measure in some cases that are things that I'm genuinely curious about.
yeah, yeah. How do you incentivize people to do the right thing? Well, it should be that if you stay in your job, that you are better off than if you don't stay in your job.
Yeah.
And we have done that. And so we have disability insurance. And in some places, the disability is so low that it's just a miserable life. You can't live on it.
Mm-hmm.
So Does that person that's disabled deserve the dignity of a decent life? And how do I mean, you asked it. How do I sort out the ones who are just abusing it as opposed to genuinely deserving it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is.
Well, I would reach into the esoteric. I mean, I use dowsing. Not everybody does. You can learn about it reading Dr. David Hawkins's books, like Power versus Force, for example, where you can actually interrogate or inquire with the universal field of consciousness and put a statement to it, and it will tell you whether something is true or not true.
Mm.
So I can make a statement. John Brown is faking his illness. And I can ask 10 different dowsers to douse it. And if 9 of them come up with, or 7 of them come up with, yes, he does, then it's probably that he does.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Have you come across dowsing, muscle testing for answers? Is that
I
something?
have heard of it before. I've never personally experienced it. I do think that there's some value there. I'd be curious as to how to use potential AI or different resources to automate it, because the other thing that I think comes to mind here, and then I want to jump back into your story specifically, because we could talk in circles forever about the systemic issues that we face.
Yep.
But something that comes up for me is just the world is just made up, and we're striving to find ways to create systems to conceptually understand. And when you look at the medical system, like dowsing sounds great. It sounds like it can create some reputability as to whether people are being honest or not honest with their symptoms based on the incentives. But the average time domain of a doctor with a patient is roughly 7 minutes.
Well, okay, so now you're throwing something else. I mean, the system is set up wrong, altogether wrong, 100% wrong.
Yes.
It's the insurance companies driving the business, and they have compressed it to try and spend less money on it. It's
Yes.
just, we need to completely build a whole new system. There's just no way you can fix the Rockefeller Carnegie medicine and make it work. Not
Yeah,
possible.
I definitely align with you. Have you taken a look at Brigham Bueller's work at all? He's been on Rogan a few times. He's the founder of Ways to Well over there in Texas.
Is he the guy who used to run pharmacies and the labs and
Yes. Yes. And now he's in the naturopath side of things. And
yeah,
he's spoken to Congress a few times. And
yeah,
me genuinely just asked some really great questions. But,
hmm yeah.
what are your thoughts before we jump back into your story? What are your thoughts on, when I was young, I had this amazing doctor. His name was Dr. Martin. I really did feel like he had my family and my best interest for sure. Um, but now it's so difficult to create trust with doctors based on the education model of pharmaceuticals and challenges with how much it costs to go to medical school. We saw the incentives with all the different issues during the COVID pandemic. And
Yeah.
then a lot of these conspiracies are now proving to be true. We're seeing apologies from Pfizer. We're seeing that the Wuhan lab actually did exist.
Yep.
And all these things that we were speculative of before are now seemingly true. And then you find out that, like, oh, wow, like RFK Jr. is saying, the vaccinations are really dangerous. I would never get a flu shot. It's like, whoa, if we didn't have these things as kids, we weren't able to attend public school. Like there was like a huge scrutiny around this. And then you saw the threatening. Like I have a bunch of Navy SEAL friends, firefighters, people that are nurses and work in the medical system that if they didn't get vaccinated, they were let go of their jobs. Now things are starting to float to the surface around that being incorrect. There's apologies. There's a ton of legalities behind the scenes. But how do we know what to trust? How do we know where to lean? How do we figure out a way forward in this land of miscellaneous information and a system that's designed for sick care, not health care,
Right.
and also for profit? Like there's so much confusion.
Well, you mentioned AI, and I think there is an answer here. And the big data, especially with insurance companies, could help us because The underwriters of life insurance policies check people's health, and they have the ability to know what they knew about the person when and what they did. Did they change their lifestyle or not? And how their life progressed and when they died. And they are really good at predicting that. And that will reveal with no doubt to me that pharmaceuticals shorten your life and the alternative, the natural ways, lengthen it. I'm certain of that.
Yeah.
So you're asking, how do we gain the trust? Well, okay, let's go back to the vaccination, for example. In 1986, Ronald Reagan signed a law that exonerated the producers of vaccines from any harm. They created the vaccination court and the vaccination fund. They knew injuries were coming, and the government took over the liability while the manufacturers retained the profits. That should never have happened.
Mm-hmm.
But the military wanted to have vaccination programs because they were concerned that if we stop vaccination programs, an attack could come at us from out there somehow that we would be unprepared for. Leave it to the military to make us feel safe and protected. Again, I said it once, I'll say it again. The Rockefeller Carnegie medicine, which means the medical schools as we know them, with the pharmaceuticals, prescriptions, and chemicals as we know them, all of that will collapse. It's an unsustainable chapter in human history that made a lot of money for a lot of people, tilted the playing field for a certain way of thinking. Mm-hmm. There's no health there.
You make some really valid points. And, to put a cap on just this little topic, if you want to find the truth, just follow the money. And you look back at, what took place from 2020 up until now, the trends of Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, some of these other pharmaceutical companies, and watching how their stocks rose and who behind the scenes was invested in a lot of those things. At some point, you have to call a spade, and you have to look at the myocarditis. You have to look at all these things, and not just throw blanket statements at people that don't necessarily align and say, oh, you don't trust the science. It's like, pause. I don't trust the science because it's not passing my smell test. You don't get to use language and create this hierarchy to put down people that are genuinely curious and saying, you know what, up until now, I've followed through on vaccines, but this one in particular had some sort of rushed course. It didn't feel right. I didn't like the public pressure, so I just wanted to observe. I wanted to see what was going on to gather more information. I'm okay being ostracized, ridiculed, and receive cease and desist from YouTube for saying that sunlight is actually really beneficial in conjunction with going for a walk and getting fresh air, things that, in my opinion, are high value, low risk. But being called stupid, not just me, but so many people in the world, for saying something about this feels off. It's not passing the vibration of my gut. And now, a few years later, seeing all those things coming true. But here's the thing that's wild to me. There's never been an apology. In my opinion, innocent people don't get pardoned. And we saw what happened with Fauci. We saw what happened in other regards. At some point, there needs to be ownership taken. I want to believe that these things were done for the good to try to protect people all over the world. But then the other side of me is like, hey, information evolves, it upgrades. Just take ownership and let's try our best to do better moving forward. But that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be this pointing of fingers that feels really off-putting and just makes me really start questioning everything. I know I'm not alone in that sentiment.
Well, let me try and dive into it from two angles. One is representative democracy as we have it, as we know it. We have two chambers, lower chamber, upper chamber. We have people who we elect to represent us to be our best to evaluate and direct and help the society do the right thing. And then we find out that they are having to re-elect themselves, which means that they're having to raise money to be re-elected, and they raise money for the party that they belong to and for themselves. And when they make that phone call to the guy who gave them some money, it's easier to make one phone call and get 100,000 than to make 1,000 calls and get $10, right? So you call the one that's going to give you the 100, and you call him and you say, "Can you send me 100 more?" And they say, "Well, how well have you served my interest in the last 2 years? And what are you promising to do for me in the 2 coming years with that $100,000 that you're asking me to give you?" So from the get-go, the playing field is tilted, and you are now allowing the interest of those who are financing the system to have a say in what's going to come through. And so the more money there is, the more influence comes with it. And then Citizens United open up the Pandora's box, the decision of the Supreme Court to allow money to be an expression of speech, free speech. So all of a sudden, you have the ability to raise infinite amounts of money and throw it at whatever problem you want.
No, it's very well said around following the money and just proving that that money does talk. The thing that's wild to me is the recent findings from Doge around how Social Security was going to all these people over 160 years old. And I'm just
Well,
like,
that's
oh my gosh. And then all of a
that's just
sudden,
sloppy. That's just sloppy management.
totally,
Okay, it does create a problem, right? But that's just sloth, incompetence, and lack of caring at the level of where this data is held and processed and managed.
for sure. And it's like trillions of dollars. It's like insane, the monumental amount. And then they also looked into and saw like SBA loans going to people under 11 years old. And I was like, whoa, those are some really like well thought out 8 and 9 and 10-year-olds. Like I wish I was on their page running a business at that
Yeah,
age.
serious businessmen. Yeah.
Yeah, totally,
Okay,
man.
so anyway, we talked about this, the money picture. We do have technology. The blockchain technology has the potential to allow us direct democracy. Like, for example, the Swiss model, it's not perfect, but it allows people to be engaged and to direct things.
Can you
And
define the blockchain technology? Because what I'm hearing is like Bitcoin and all these things that seemingly are subtly
okay,
government
well,
unregulated, but I'd love some more context there.
okay. Well, okay, so Bitcoin is one possible application of blockchain technology. Blockchain technology, computing power strong enough to allow you to trace how a thing started, who touched it, how they touched it, and what they did to it.
Mm,
So it's the provenance. Like, for example, if you have a work of art, you want to be able to trace it back to the origin point rather than wonder whether it's a fake or not.
it's like a certificate of authenticity and the
Mhm.
journey traveled of that particular.
Any
Uh,
one thing.
got it.
Any one thing. So the Bitcoin itself has its full history, how it traveled through its existence to now.
Got it.
So my vote, for example, if it's blockchained, it will be known what I said and what I wanted, right? So I can go big numbers. I can go 400 million participants or 200 million voters, and my opinion will be requested and noted and tracked and expressed and followed up on,
Mhm.
right? This is what the boys in the Doge are hoping to accomplish someday. Right now, all they're doing is just looking under the hood at the surface level. I listened to Elon Musk talk about the fact that they didn't even think to ask whether a check that is written and signed and cashed has to be coded to a particular category and written out as to what it's paying for. He says there are blank checks going to anybody with no recourse whatsoever.
Mm.
That
A
should
lot of that
never
traces
happen.
back to, I think he mentioned NGOs, non-government organizations,
Yeah, yeah.
and those
Well, okay.
organizations that are
If you,
nonprofit that you can find a loophole with regards to where government funding is sent that's not as traceable. And seemingly, Elon mentions George Soros as being somebody that has participated in this regularly to
mm, yeah,
create
he's one
funding
of those. But
parties.
anybody can. Listen, so the NGO is essentially a proxy, right? Previously, we have rules about how a government employee has to behave, cannot do certain things, cannot destroy records, cannot behave badly. However, a government employee, for example, in the form of the USAID, can funnel funds to an organization that's outside, a contractor, if you will, and hand over money and let them do whatever they decide to do. It's no longer done by the government. It no longer has to be tracked. It no longer has to be revealed. The freedom of information request doesn't apply to it, right? You just got rid of the problem by it's sort of like hiring somebody to kill a person you don't like and pretending that, well, if I didn't kill him, then it doesn't count.
Hmm.
That's essentially that, right? You want a dirty job done and you hand it off to a organization that can do it, and it's not on your books and it's not in your hands. That's what
Hmm.
the NGO allows you to do.
Yeah. It reminds me of The Blacklist. I don't know if you've ever seen that with Raymond Reddington.
Yeah,
Very
right.
cool show. Yeah, man, there's a lot going on behind the scenes,
So,
and
yeah,
I'm impressed with your knowledge here. This is pretty cool stuff.
well, just to say, my degree, I went to school in Prague, Czechoslovakia, Institute of Economics, and I have a degree in business administration and computer science. Actually, I didn't finish. I don't have a degree. I studied the whole thing and I left as a refugee just before I got the degree. So I have the education, I don't have the paper.
Hmm.
Anyway, I have a state board exam in Marxist Leninist doctrine. All right.
Hmm.
I understand the communist thing
Yeah,
deeply.
totally.
I had to study it.
Yeah, totally. It's pretty cool to hear that though, and realize that I'm not too far fetched with my previously viewed conspiracist
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, your follow the money line is very, very apropos, right? That's exactly what it is. And so blockchain, if I may, is the ultimate tool for follow the money because it allows you to track every dollar, it allows you to track every decision, every law, every rule, who did it or who agreed to it, why did they agree to it, how did they implement it, whom did it affect, and so on. The whole thing.
No, totally. You mentioned growing up in the 50s and what food was like for you, your father, and your family. You've lived through multiple historical decades where there's been a lot of different things that have gone on. I'm kind of tinkering with the recency bias of the COVID
Yeah,
pandemic. There's also, some of the stock market crashes. There's different
yeah.
uh, NATO issues. There's different wars. There's different things that have gone on in your time on this earth.
Yeah.
What kind of stands out to you as to when you started to develop like a tangible understanding of what's right versus what's wrong? And really dive into your healing journey. Like what kind of stands out within that time frame
Ah,
where you really started to like open your eyes and peek your eyebrows into clarity?
wow. You're asking the kind of questions that I would like my children to have been asking me.
Hmm.
Um, I was an 11-year-old boy when I heard on the radio that they shot Jack Kennedy.
Hmm.
I was in a communist country then, behind the Iron Curtain, growing up under the full communist indoctrination. I was growing up with a father who was afraid to say things in front of me because he wasn't sure that I wouldn't rat him out at school, because an innocent child doesn't know any better, and the teacher can suss out of a kid information that you wouldn't want to know.
Mm-hmm.
My mom went through the concentration camp experience. Her background's Jewish. Out of the 55 immediate relatives that went in, 2 came back.
Well,
So I have some of the trauma in me and some of the toxicity and some of the genetics. It's kind of interesting. She survived probably because she was hypothyroid. Hypothyroid people have low energy consumption. They can survive on much fewer calories than others. So
mm,
I'm thinking famines and experiments like the concentration camps would pre-sort people for the MTHFR and hypothyroidism, all of which I have. And then the experiences, how does that prepare you? You know, by the time I realized that I was living in a society where I knew that I was required to lie, the person that asked me to lie knew I was lying. I knew that he knew that I was lying, and it was just all charade. It was the emperor's new clothes kind of a charade.
mm,
And then in 1968, I was 16 years old. We had that brief moment, a few months from January to August, when we had the Prague Spring, where all of a sudden the nation woke up and said, we don't want these lies, we want the truth. And gradually, by March, they were telling interesting stories. By June, they were in open telling what a lie it was. So America experienced this same kind of thing with COVID just now. Out and out lies. Emperor has no clothes, pretending that masks don't work. Oh yes, they work. No, they don't work. Yes, everybody should wear them. Everybody has to get the shots, but the shots protect you. Oh no, they don't protect you. You know, like the shifting sands of the lies that they are putting out, and you're essentially required to put on a mask as a sign that you are compliant with the charade. I was a young pioneer. That was the word that they used for Czech children. I was required to wear a white shirt and a red scarf tied in a particular way on my shirt because that was the sign. And my mom had to put it on me when I went to school, right? Because otherwise you are sticking out. And my dad's main line was, don't stick out. You get hammered if you do. He lived in fear. Well, perhaps for a good reason. When my dad was in the last year of his university, he was kicked out of the university because his background, his father, was an exploiter of the working class. My grandfather was a butcher and employed 3 guys. He was not seen as somebody who, through his ingenuity and diligence, provided job for 3 people. He was seen as the exploiter. Therefore, his son was not suited or suitable to finish a university education. So my dad, age 23, got kicked out of school and sent to 2 years of military service. Not just any fun service, pontoons on Danube in the winter, you
mm.
know, freezing your hands in cold water kind of thing. Anyway, so he came back from it affected and broken. And then somehow he appealed 3 times and was allowed to finish the school and finished the school, got his degree, became a veterinarian. So he eventually did get that, but with a 2 year pause. So, for example, this affair happened when my mom was 7 months pregnant with me. That's when he was sent away. So I didn't know my dad until I was close to 2 years old. Okay, where am I? Where am I getting with all of this? I think the lesson for America should be that truth is really important and character is really important, and being cowed into compliance is the worst kind of cowardice. And yet, they can get us one at a time. I remember the movie where the boys are standing up and saying, I am Spartacus. I am Spartacus. Everybody's a Spartacus. We need men who are willing to do that. I am Spartacus. I'm willing to die for it. Well, and so, okay, I voted with my feet, right? When I grew up, I was 24 years old. It came to me that there's just no way I want to live the rest of my life in that system, in that I know I'm lying, they know I'm lying, we all know everybody's lying, but we are willing to accept this lie as a lifestyle. Anyway, so I became a refugee under United Nations. I got out. I ended up in Canada. And the damn thing caught up with me here. You know, this COVID thing, I was thinking, where am I going to run to now? People are not waking up. Thank God we did. Thank God for Elon Musk, who pulled the plug and put $40 billion into the X purchase or Twitter purchase. That is the door to our freedom.
I'm happy you noted that, because freedom of speech is so important. And I think at that time, with the slandering of communication, the misinformation, kicking people off of different platforms, shadow banning them, not allowing for honest communication, it created so much of just singular focus towards those lies. And,
Yeah.
since we talk a lot about nutrition with you today, and we're going to continue that conversation, nutrition isn't just what you consume with your mouth. It's what you consume with your eyes and ears as well.
So,
Right?
in some way, I would say this. When I talk about illness, I use the iceberg as a metaphor. And the thing that you see above the waterline, that's the physical presentation of your illness. That's the symptoms you know. But the under the waterline, the 90% of that thing, that's in the emotional world, in the subconscious. It's your thoughts and your emotions that are driving that whole thing.
No, totally.
Yeah.
Jumping into thoughts and emotions, man. How do you think those things impact your physical health? And what are some of the simple practices that people can utilize mentally to kind of steer them in the right direction? Because we've heard it from different experts that we've had on the show around how the left hip typically holds emotional pain, and different spots in the body in relation to chakras and things like that. What are your thoughts and your beliefs on energy work and how those things can manifest into
Right.
pain?
All right. I'll start further back. I categorize the causes of illness into 4 categories: toxicity, malnutrition, stagnation, and trauma. Toxicity, stuff that is in you and your body and your environment that should not be there. It has to come out. So that would be heavy metals and volatile organic compounds, plastics, you name it, stuff. Malnutrition, that's the miserably badly grown foods that are devoid of nutrition. Calorie rich, nutrient poor. You can be eating even the right choices. They still not maybe not well enough, rich enough, concentrated enough to feed you well. Stagnation is important because we have this lymphatic system. All the fluids other than your blood that are in your body, they must move. And if they don't move, they stagnate, they putrefy, they turn into a swamp, and it stinks. Anyway, you will have heard metaphors like take a look at an aquarium. If the fish in the aquarium were like the cells in your body, the fluids in the aquarium would be like the lymphatic fluids in yourself. If your fish are not healthy, it's because the water is bad.
Yeah.
If your cells are not healthy, it's because your fluids are not right. And stagnation is one of the main problems with it. And that involves movement, exercise, but also proper filtration. So that needs to be taken care of. Somebody asked me, what is the most important thing? What's the first thing you need to do? To which I said, well, of the four wheels on your car, which is the important one? Anyway, so the fourth thing here is the trauma. And that's the subconscious, invisible, the emotional, and how to deal with that. There are many ways. Well, I'll start with this. A memory is something that is not recorded like on a CD or a tape. It's stored, and when it's played back, it's lived. You're not playing something that's static. You're reliving it, and as you're reliving it, you're re-recording it back in. So your emotional state that you're in when you're reliving it is making it either stronger or weaker, making it either more awful or more pleasant. Like every time you redo it, you re-record it in. So whatever trauma you have had, talking about it with a therapist is really just redepositing the same thing back in. That's not going to help you much. However, if you use some other methods like EFT, emotion freedom technique, or emotion code, or body talk, quantum healing, touch for health, neuro-linguistic programming, there are a whole bunch of methods, each of which will allow the memory, the stored physiology. By the way, that is stored in the fluid, in the water. The wet mass of your body is the storage device for the emotions. Anyway, you can find ways to unwind and change and reprogram, completely reprogram what you know, what you remember, how you think of yourself, the values and the expression of those. All of that's changeable, pliable, but it needs to be worked out.
Very, very interesting. What are the four things one more time? Just so if anybody wants to take notes for themselves.
Toxicity,
Yep.
malnutrition, stagnation, trauma.
Very well said.
Yeah.
What do you believe is the most overlooked source of toxicity in our daily lives that people should be aware of? I know you mentioned the four wheels, but in order for people to address the four wheels, they got to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you kind of alluded to the water. We're talking about fluoride in the water. I think you talked about filtration. I've seen the Berkey water filters.
Yeah.
I've seen other forms of filtration. Where would you suggest people start?
Yeah. So yeah, you have two questions here, the what and the how, right? And the what, I think the most awful things are heavy metals. Mercury, lead, cadmium, uranium, arsenic. But mercury and lead are probably the worst of the lot. And they really distort everything. Like as long as you have that in your body, nothing works right. So when Robert Kennedy was working on fish and the mercury problem, he understood mercury as the worst things. So when he finally realized that there's mercury in vaccinations, that's when he realized how connected those two things are.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Wow. Why is there mercury in vaccinations?
Aha. Well, okay, so the concept of vaccine is that you take a living thing, like I don't know, a bacterium, like you want to say stop tuberculosis, that's caused a bacterium. And so you will make a dead bacterium and you need to kill it somehow, and you bring it into the body, and then you want to mount a response of the immune system, and you want to irritate the immune system with what's called the adjuvant. And that's something awful and toxic that you mix in with it. And when you see the body go after the site, the immune system goes after the site, trying to undo the harm that you just inflicted, and it will notice those the payload, which is the viral or bacterial or whatever it is that you put in there. It will create antibodies to that, and that will carry you for the rest of your life with recognizing when that comes in, you react. So the early things were, it's called thimerosal, which is a mercury compound. That to this day it's used in multivalent flu shots. It's not used in childhood vaccinations anymore. It used to be, but they now replaced it with aluminum, which is directly associated with brain damage. So it's not a win.
Would you say the best thing to do is to not vaccinate so that way you can get natural immunity based on exposure to a lot of these illnesses?
There are some statistics done. One was an experiment in Guyana, British Guyana, where half the population was vaccinated and the other half wasn't. And then they tracked the children into adulthood. And what they found was that while the children may not have died of the thing they were vaccinated against, like diphtheria, their overall life outcomes were much worse than the people who were not vaccinated. They died sooner, were more ill, had other complications. Same thing is known. There was a doctor, I'm trying to think of his name. He's currently working for CHD, Children Health Net Defense, the organization that Bobby Kennedy started. Tom, the word something like Schmidt comes to mind, but I'm not remembering it clearly. Anyway, he had a practice in Oregon. He was a pediatrician, and he went through 3,000 of his patients, all of their files. And he said that the more you delayed or deleted vaccinations, the better the overall health of the child. So the numbers, the big numbers, say that the entire premise of the vaccination idea is wrong. You're sacrificing all for the protection of the few. And in the process of saving the few, you end up everyone else more sick and create worse outcome than you would have had you done nothing.
Wow. This epitomizes just the concept of less is more, the human nature of wanting to seek control and just trying to fit a square peg in a round hole rather than allowing nature to do its thing.
Right.
Like, sick is part of the journey, but being sick from a vaccine is not part of the journey. It's man-made.
Well, some of these stories are that, for example, polio, the epidemic of polio was directly overlaid with the usage of DDT. Was it an infection or was it a toxicity of the nation expressed in this way? The other one, measles. Measles was practically eradicated by the time they introduced the vaccine.
Yeah, I saw that. The dates didn't add up. By the time they brought on the vaccine, which it should take a long time like that based on case studies and very deep research for protection, but measles was basically gone by the time it was put out to the public.
But we have now lost the herd immunity that we naturally had, right? Like it's okay for a child to get measles between the age of, say, 2 and 10. It's awful for the infant, and it's really awful for the grown-ups. But
What are your thoughts on some of the naturopathic things that we hear from like Dr. Rhonda Patrick around, enhancing vitamin A for something like measles? Obviously people
yeah,
talk about deficiencies in vitamin D and magnesium. And then also just some of these other medications. I mean, during COVID, we heard the term ivermectin thrown around quite a bit.
mm,
And now with the challenges of addiction, we've heard the name ibogaine kind of thrown
all right,
around a lot.
okay.
And those are things that are not in traditional
Well,
medicine.
you have a way of asking a question that requires four answers. Um, okay, let's start with any one of them. Okay, so ivermectin. Let's start with we have the emergency use authorization for the mRNA technology, which they call vaccine, but is not a vaccine. It is a genetic manipulation. It is not a vaccine. Should never have been allowed to be called that, but they called it that to get it into the program under the vaccination. And the emergency use authorization requires a legal construct that there is no other usable tool available. So for that reason, you have to suppress and dismiss any solution in favor of this emergency use authorization. So that's the legal thing, how they pushed it. And the story was, of course, one was the hydroxychloroquine, which that's a pharmaceutical version of quercetin. And quercetin is a natural immune supporting nutrient found in many, many plants. And ivermectin is a pharmaceutical version of artemisinin, which is the alkaloid found in wormwood. And wormwood is an old herbal remedy used for parasitic and infectious diseases.
Mm.
To this day, we have tinctures with wormwood in it. To this day, I can sell you artemisinin concentrate, which is the natural way, whereas the ivermectin is a pharmaceutical modification of the natural
Can
nature
people
made thing.
get wormwood over the counter? How do people get their hands on that?
Well, you can go to the meadow, harvest wormwood, put it into some vodka, and extract it, and have yourself a wormwood tincture. Not hard.
Mm.
Any
What's
herbalist will know
what's
how
another
to.
what's another way to get it that might be a little bit easier for some people that
Oh, call Life Enthusiast, and we'll send it to you.
I love it. I love it. What are your thoughts on some of the things floating to the surface around since we're talking about pollutants right now and pesticides and all kinds of parasites? I've heard things talked about black seed oil recently.
All right. Okay, so parasite. Parasite finds it easier to live in a weakened body. So the less mineralization you have, the more likely you are to be acceptable terrain for parasites, that they survive your internal, right? So if you are loading with minerals, if you're loading with, okay, I'll introduce another word, zeta potential. Zeta potential is a electric idea where you have particles that if they are charged, they will repel one another, not clump. If they're uncharged, discharged, they will stick to one another like magnets. This is what happens to your red blood cells. People who do dark field microscopy, live blood analysis will show it to you, that you will have, they call the rouleau, stuck blood cells, red blood cells in a stack that looks like a stack of quarters put together. Whereas when you raise your zeta potential, these things will increase their charge and start repelling and will be independent of one another and able to carry better load. Because when they're stuck together, they can't attach to anything, only one another. So when they are dispersed, they can carry nutrients in and toxins out. That's that aquarium that we were talking about. So greater zeta potential from better mineralization, from better nutrition, building health, less chance of a parasite taking up residence in that kind of body, because it's hostile towards the parasite. Now, if you do have parasites, and most of us encounter that everywhere, including here, do deworming. Ivermectin is awesome in deworming. So is wormwood. So are there are several other plants that we put into a tincture that we call vermifuge, which is a really cool way of making the vermin run. That's what the name
Very
is,
cool.
vermifuge.
When you say tincture, you mean an extracted liquid that you put under your tongue and gets absorbed sublingually?
Yeah, yeah, it looks something like this in a bottle with an eyedropper, and you put stuff in the eyedropper, and then you put it in your mouth.
Is that wormwood right there?
No, this one is called white elephant, and it's a cognitive support of it's anyway, it makes you smarter.
Hey, second half of this podcast about to get real good.
Yeah, you will notice that despite my advanced age, I can still recall things.
Yeah, you're very good. It's impressive because I'm dancing a little bit over here because I'm just so curious. I want to fit in.
Could you throw in that question? I said it deserved 4 answers. Oh yeah, you threw in ibogaine.
Yeah.
Well, so the ibogaine is a plant, and it's really awful when you take it. It's really not fun, but it ends addictions. So anyone who is addicted to morphine stuff, like all of the opioid stuff or alcohol stuff or whatever, any other addiction that you may have, you do ibogaine, you come back free of all of that. Now,
Wow.
America, of course, doesn't do ibogaine. You have to go to Mexico, Nicaragua, Brazil. I don't know where you need to go, but it'll work. You come back a restored person. Addiction's gone.
I'm hearing almost that is it similar to an ayahuasca experience or
Okay, so
what is
that's a
it like?
different thing. Ayahuasca, which carries with it the DMT, dimethyltryptamine, that's a trip to meet your maker. When you do ayahuasca, or if you can do it just in a quick trip with DMT. Again, all illegal in the United States. Can't do it here. You have to travel somewhere else. You get to meet the creation, how a universe is put together. You get to understand exactly who you are as a discorporate entity, the soul.
Mm.
You know, I'm the meat that I'm here, the physiological stuff, that's the tool. That's like the car. In the car, there's a cab driver. The cab driver is driving the taxi cab. But in the back seat, there's a passenger asking the cab driver to take him someplace. But that passenger has a boss that sent him on a mission to get into a cab to deliver something somewhere. So the boss is the soul. Talking to me, I talk to myself, right? In words in my head, that's the conscious connection. And then that connection decides that he wants to move fingers. And that's in response, that's the body.
So that's the best metaphor I've heard for that relationship with ayahuasca and just kind of the experience that one can have based on the car analogy. I really like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually am of the opinion that any politician, before entering into an important function, should be required to do 2 trips. Ibogaine and ayahuasca.
Let's jump into the ibogaine understanding.
All right.
You mentioned it being a root and you mentioned it being horrible.
The
But
experience is not fun. You don't take it like to giggle.
got it. What is the experience like with ibogaine and why does it work? Does it show people a version of rock bottom or what does it allow them to come in
I don't
contact with?
know. I don't
And
know
to-
enough. I've never done it myself. I'm not the authority to answer it, but I do know. I interviewed a guy who was doing the ibogaine, had a website. The FDA made him take it down. He called me up and said, Martin, we need to take this down, this podcast. I'm sorry, they are after me and I have to shut the business down.
Interesting.
And he was taking people, addicted people, through the trip. And the end result, while the journey itself is very unpleasant, the end result is that you're free of the addiction, whatever that may be.
When you say unpleasant, like purging, or why is it
Mm-hmm.
unpleasant? I'm not
Yeah,
understanding.
physiologically unpleasant.
Got it. Free is the way to be. Life beats us up a bit and causes some bumps and bruises, but that doesn't mean we have to stay on the sidelines. This is why we've partnered with Kinyan Labs. Get back to doing what you love with this incredible portable device designed to get you back in the game. Kinyan is on a mission to move people from pain to possible with their top-rated red light therapy and laser solution, which tackles inflammation along with muscle and joint pain quickly and effectively. What I love is that it's portable and rechargeable, making it easy to actually incorporate into my everyday life consistently. It's small and lightweight, so you can throw it in your gym bag or work bag or even an overnighter. Kinyan's lasers and LED combo make this cutting-edge device extremely versatile for use with general aches and pains, as well as chronic back pain, arthritis, post-surgery recovery, endometriosis, and more. This has been an amazing tool keeping my elbows and knees pain-free for pressing, pulling, and squatting in the gym. Great tools like the Move Plus give me the freedom and flexibility to continue living life on my terms without limitations. There are a lot of reasons why over 15,000 people are using this device and rating it 4.7 stars and above. Head on over to kinyan.io and use code ALLSMITH at checkout to begin your pain-free journey. Why do you think the FDA asked him to take it down? Do you think it was a conflict with Big Pharma and it's pissing off people because they weren't purchasing the pills anymore?
I think the Purdy, the people who make OxyContin and Vicodin and all of that stuff, those people did not want somebody liberating their customers. It's just wrong for plant materials to be available to the public. Only drugs are allowed.
And then becomes the huge push around trust the science. Ibogaine not looked that often. Ivermectin's not looked that often, and thank God for Rogan and RFK Jr. for making these things more readily available to our headspace.
Yeah. Well, you heard me say that earlier in this conversation, that I believe that the Rockefeller-Carnegie medicine that's driven with the pharmaceutical model of existence or of practice is dead. It's just waiting to fall.
Yeah.
The big data will reveal it. Have you ever talked to Gary Brecka?
Yeah, actually. Is that why do I know that name?
Gary Brecka was an insurance researcher. He was the guy who read something like 20,000 records predicting when a person will die.
Oh, wow.
And he learned from that there are certain things. Well, when you hear Gary talk about it, he'll say, well, there was a medical procedure like a hip replacement done because of a bad prescription, say for like statins, that was given. That was not necessary because of a mistaken belief that cholesterol is a problem, that it was given to treat high blood pressure that was actually caused by deficiency in vitamin B6 and 12.
Oh my goodness.
Right? So that's the cascade you will hear come out of Gary Brecka's mouth. Yeah. And he'll tell you, I can quote you 1,000 different pathways to 1,000 different diseases, all of which are inflammatory, degenerative, metabolic diseases that are maltreated by pharmaceuticals. And Gary himself said that he believes that AI sent into the files of the life insurance companies will reveal it very clearly that pharmaceuticals make things worse, not better.
Yeah. Man, I definitely want to connect with him and make that something that's more popular within the realm.
Oh, he's popular. He just has a problem. He got into a business deal with people that completely tanked the business that he's
Got
in.
it.
I think he's suing the guys. That there's some legal issue that he needs to resolve. I think he has 2 years before he is free to do whatever he wants to do.
Oh man. It just goes to show how truth is so difficult to uncover because of the legalities, because of contracts and business dealings and all these things.
Yeah, you said it 3 times already. Yeah, you said it 3 times today. Follow the
Yeah.
money. It's that, and people will do horrible things because of that.
Yeah. Sad, man.
Yeah.
Going back to just doing the right thing when nobody's watching, character and integrity, like you mentioned early. We talked a little bit about toxicity. We talked about the mercury poisoning, and I know it's been popularized with Tony Robbins. He definitely dealt with that when he was over consuming swordfish. When you unpack his story a little bit, I think that's where your story kind of started to unpack, and you got more curious around the age of 25. What was that experience like, and how were you able to uncover that it was mercury right away?
Yeah, well, I walked into a dentist's office with health insurance in hand, and they said, "Do you have health insurance?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And they did the full investigation, showed me on X-rays that I had 12 teeth that needed to be fixed. To this day, I don't understand why all the other ones did not get any worse. I think I was sold a bunch of goods, but needless to say, I was given a choice. So you can get the silver fillings or the white fillings. The silver fillings last about 20 years. The white things need to be replaced after about 10. And the white fillings cost a bit more money. They're not covered by insurance fully. And I said, "Is there any other difference?" And they said, "No." So I said, "Okay, silver it is." Well, it's silver mercury amalgam, 50-50. They somewhat misled me. Anyway, so it just started a dive. I went into bad back, migraines, allergies, weight gain, depression, suicidal, all kinds of stuff, right? Like really bad. And it was getting worse and worse because I'm a poor methylator, so I don't detoxify well. So it had worse effect on me than it would have on somebody else. Yeah. So I went to the surgeon, orthopedic surgeon. I had carpal tunnel syndrome. I had plantar fasciitis. I couldn't walk. So he gave me a cortisone shot that made it go away for 6 weeks, but it came back worse. Then I discovered chiropractic. So I would go to a chiropractor. He'd put me back together. But one of the things that mercury does, it weakens the discs. It weakens the structural integrity of the connective tissue because that's where mercury goes to die or to go parked. You see, what your body does, it cannot handle touching it, so it goes hiding it into places of low circulation. So fat, cartilage, ligament, bone. That's where it goes to hide it. So anyway, my spine was going to hell. I was losing the adjustment. I was not holding the adjustment. So I would have 3-4 days that I was fine, and then it would pop again, and I would be in horrible pain. Like I would be sleeping face down on a rocking chair and rolling off of it and crawling to the bathroom. I couldn't walk.
Mm.
After 2 weeks of that, it might let go. The body somehow puts itself back together. I would resume. But 4 or 5 months later, it would blow out again. Anyway, so chiropractic kept me going. Naturopathic, I went there looking for solutions for allergies that they were horrendous. Like I wanted to gouge my eyes out in the springtime. Anyway, after about 8 years, 10 years of this, by the time I was about 35, I finally clued in to the fact that none of these professionals are going to help me. And I'm a systems analyst. I should have clued in sooner, but I was so well indoctrinated in trusting the professionals, the people with the white coat and a diploma on the wall, that it took me a long time. But once I gave up, I went and started reading books. I went researching what this is. And I figured it out. It was the mercury. Then I figured out that it can be taken out of the body using zeolite. That was just coming into popularity then. The first one that I ever found was called Viora. They're long gone now, but
What is
or maybe
zeolite?
they're
Where
around.
can people get that?
Zeolite is all over the planet. It's something that is born from a volcanic eruption under the sea. So of course, there were many continents that were under the sea. They are not under the sea now. You will find zeolite in great many places. Some are cleaner, some are less clean, but there's lots of it around. So for human consumption, you're looking for zeolite that's clinoptilolite, that's at a low contamination level.
Got it. And is it in capsule form or tincture form?
Both are
Okay.
available. Here's here's a liquid form. This one is called Masterpiece,
Okay.
and I use that now mainly because not only does it have zeolite in it, it also has a high vibration in it. It's the I mentioned David Hawkins a moment ago. Map of consciousness is one of the things he does. And when you take this stuff, you are actually helping to raise your consciousness, which will take you from fear to courage, to from courage to truth, from truth to science, and from science to love.
Wow. I definitely need to get my hands on some of that. I might message you offline to get
Sure.
connected and share some of those things with our community and get that in our show notes
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Happy to supply that. And anyway, so I did zeolite back when. That helped me get the stuff out of me so that the distortions started to lower. And then I discovered free form amino acids. Those are the building blocks of all tissues. So with the help of the aminos, the discs were re-strengthening so that I would no longer lose the adjustment, so I could actually exercise or do physical stuff
Hmm.
again. So by the time I was 45, this is now 20 years in, I was back to full strength. And by then I was ready to start the online business, Life Enthusiast.
Wow.
That's what I did. So I traded management consulting. I used to do computer systems and whatnot. And I decided to be my own client, built a website, and I now have a business that's both manufacturing of the superfoods and also of selling it to the public
Very cool.
and coaching.
I
Yeah.
love to hear this because I think Simon Sinek talks about it. People don't buy exactly what you do, they buy why you do it. And to hear the tangible story of, a 20-year experience of wanting to get yourself out of pain. I mean, most people, if
Yeah.
that doesn't work in the first 3 to 5 year mark, throw in the towel and say, give me pharmaceuticals, give me the things that are going to work now, that are going to work
Yeah.
fast. I love
Yeah.
that you stubbornly persisted in the pursuit of a pain-free life, and now you're using those experiences to pay it forward to other
Hmm.
people.
Yeah. Well, once I gave up on the mainstream, once I realized that they were the ones that caused the problem, I decided I was going to look for solutions elsewhere. And, in the process of researching that, I keep throwing the name Rockefeller Carnegie medicine, right? Whoever's listening to it, go look it up.
Mhm.
Look up Fishbein, look up Rockefeller, look up Carnegie, look back into 1910 to 1920 when they decided to own the medical industry and how they got around to doing it. It's a very insightful story.
Yeah, I'm excited to unpack that and peel the layers back a little bit there. Are you familiar with a company called Wizard Sciences?
I'm not.
I definitely will chat with you about those guys a little bit. The founder's name is Ion Mitchell, and he's soon doing some really cool work around carbon
Hmm.
60 serum and different forms of
Okay.
magnesium.
Well, we do sell carbon 60. We do
Oh,
that.
very cool. Yeah, it'd be fun to have you guys kind of chop it up together. And he's the one that kind of steered me in the direction of methylene blue. What are your thoughts
Yeah,
on
we
that?
sell that too.
Great. That's great. I'm definitely going to get on board with some of your supplements. But what are your thoughts on methylene blue that could benefit people?
In a high dose, it probably is not a great thing because it's a chemical.
Mhm.
In low dose, it will facilitate much better exchanges, ionic exchanges. So it will definitely help people with chronic inflammatory degenerative issues, whether it's mental problems or physical problems. I've used it. I use it myself now and then now. When I put it on intensely, I had the detox that just was so dramatic. It was it was quite interesting. The last thing that I needed to drain was my brain because mercury gets into fat and your brain is made with fat. And once I started using methylene blue, all of my lymphatics all around my head swelled up. I looked like a boxer after a
Oh,
fight,
wow.
just beat up. And it lasted about 10 days. And then I don't, I have the pictures of myself. I don't feel like showing it, but I looked really
What do you
different.
think caused that? Just because of the fluid buildup up there, the methylene blue kind
Cleansing.
of brought that out and then allowed for the
Yeah.
lymphatic drainage
Yeah.
later?
Yeah. Pulling. I used a little too much and it was overtaxing my ability to drain.
Mm.
Right? Your detox capacity is finite. And if you overwhelm it, then you'll end up with unpleasant symptoms.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
How do you now think about with the world changing, with big pharma changing, with Doge integrated, and you having some of these things that maybe previously were a little bit non-traditional. Now we're seeing peptides, we're seeing lots of different biohacking techniques. We're seeing things like what we just
Yeah.
discussed around methylene blue, ibogaine, ivermectin. All these things are surfacing as great tools. How do you view this impacting your business, and where can people get in contact with you and your business?
Well, the where is the website is called Life Enthusiast, life-enthusiast.com. And I guess you can say it's a highly curated set of products where, after 40 years of being in this space, I have tested a lot on myself or on customers, and just I can tell you what will work and why.
Hmm.
It's the why that I really like to get to in many
Agreed.
cases. The way the world is, we're not out of the woodwork or out of the woods yet. You know, this was just the first round, and Doge has an upper hand for now. But the pushback is coming.
Yeah.
There are going to be reversals and whatnot. I mean, I have been shadow banned, I have been deplatformed, and all of that before, right? So it may still
Yeah,
come.
for sure. Well, I really admire your courage, your enthusiasm to love and support people in so many different ways. I love the four pillars that you mentioned of toxicity, so people can better
Mhm.
understand. I love the familiarity that you have with things like ayahuasca and ibogaine and the experiences that take place, and also just goes to show that like anything isolated by itself is typically connected to almost everything else in the body. And for us to think that it's just
Yeah.
isolated as one thing and that a specialist can attack one thing with one medication is a little bit unrealistic because it's going to have a domino or a trickle down effect for sure.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. When I was a younger man, like in my 20s, I did some yoga stuff. I mean, I'm still doing the physical yoga, but back then I got my hands on a book and I read the book and I didn't start from the beginning. I opened it in the middle and I read this exercise, and I thought, that's cool. And I did that. And all of a sudden, I was essentially spiraling out of control, right? Like I just triggered stuff in my brain that I was not prepared for. And I was all of a sudden having to fight for my sanity to retain my consciousness. But it was an interesting trip. And so later I did some more of this type of activity. You know, DMT is something that the ayahuasca active ingredient is something that your body makes anyway. It can be made, and these practices, especially from India, will let you make a whole lot of it. So I have had some really interesting spiritual experiences on my way.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I just did a men's retreat out in Joshua Tree, and we brought in an amazing breathwork specialist from the Phoenix area named Coulter Smith. And he led an incredible, about 90-minute breathwork experience that releases some DMT. And it was a very profound experience to be in that and to explore within that without any sort of additives. It's just you and your breath and manifesting what your body already makes. And it just shows that with the right tactics and the right shaman or the right directional tools, we can tap into some of these things and really get into the body's natural way of healing. What are your thoughts on fasting? That's something that I think is kind of floating around a lot. That we talked briefly on
Right.
ketones, but fasting seems to be a
Right.
really good way to tackle inflammation, especially when done appropriately.
Mm-hmm. Well, your brain definitely runs better on ketones than it runs on glucose. So if you want to be smart or have a decent recall, then ketosis is a better state than being fed by bread and pizza
Mhm.
or beer or alcohol,
Mhm.
for that matter. Fasting in general, at least one day a week. 24-hour is great if you can handle it. Not everybody's up for it. Some people do better on the intermittent, where they just skip, say, you can skip breakfast and lunch and just do dinner, just compress it into one meal. The the adrenal types do better on a dinner only. The pituitary types do better on breakfast only. The thyroid types are the least likely to do well on long fasts, but still, it's an awesome thing. I'll launch into this. Cancer, as we know it, is not a genetic disease. It's proven beyond doubt by Dr. Thomas Seyfried. It's a metabolic disease. And that means that cancer will metabolize glucose as its fuel. It cannot metabolize fat. So if you put yourself on a keto diet or outright fasting, which will also force you into ketosis because your what is it called, the adipose tissue, your fat supply that you have in your body, will start getting consumed when the body decides that, oh, there's no food coming, let's switch to internal reserves, time to eat reserves. So if I had cancer, I'd do a week-long fast. I would shut the thing down.
Yeah, I totally respect and honor that. And you're not the only person I've spoken to that's talked about that. What are your thoughts on? I get this question a lot around, hey, what are maybe some of the non-negotiable supplements that people can integrate? And there's a lot of conflicting information on this topic, but from what I've seen, the deficiencies for most humans are vitamin D, magnesium, and then you look at, getting tremendous benefit from things like fish oil, from collagen. We're seeing the cognitive and muscular benefits from creatine. And then obviously, if you have to, integrating maybe some sort of protein source to help with muscle repair and the branched chain amino acids that you talked about.
Right. Well, you pretty much named the whole thing, right? So, one, toxicity. Make sure you don't get chlorine or glyphosate into your body, volatile organic compounds, and so on. They will block the normal
They're in Girl
expression
Scout
of
cookies,
everything.
and they're in
Pardon?
Girl Scout cookies. Glyphosate.
Oh, God. Well, listen, today, wheat, lentil, and chickpeas are grown in America. Oh, and corn are grown in America with the help of
Hmm.
glyphosate. So those are out, period. Okay, anyway, so you wanted the inputs, the nutrients. Yes, vitamin D3, that's the sunshine vitamin. Go running around naked. Electrons in general. Electron is the currency of life, right? Electron taken away is aging. Electron given back is anti-aging. It's antioxidant. Walk barefoot on wet ground, like lakeshore,
Mm.
seashore. Go hug trees. Put your hands in dirt. Eat food that's still raw, that has grown in the ground, like cucumbers and carrots and whatever. Any all of that raw. Once you cook it, the electrons are gone. So sunshine, electrons, clean water without chlorine. Okay, that was the D3. That was the sunshine. Vitamin C is a great antioxidant. It's in most plants. You need that. Vitamin B group, some of us need more B3. The entire Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle has several inputs. Glucose is one, oxygen is the other. And at one point you get in nicotinic acid, that's vitamin B3. And another point you're injecting NMN and another NAD. So those are awesome inputs for mitochondria, for
Hmm.
energy. Plus red light,
Yeah,
right?
red light
Like
therapy
turn
too.
on your red light lamps. B6, B12. If you're the adrenal type, push B5. Folate, not folic acid. Anything that says fortified or what's the other word they use? Yeah, that doesn't scare me so much. I'm talking about the food which is enriched flour or fortified
Got it.
flour, because that is essentially sprayed down with folic acid, a thing that is man-made. It's not natural, and anybody with the MTHFR, it's about 44% of the population, can't handle
Mm.
it. It just causes endless amount of trouble. Okay, but you asked the supplements. Well, okay, yeah, everything you named is spot on. So magnesium is the mineral that will balance calcium. Calcium is the stress mineral. Magnesium is the anti-stress mineral. So especially in the evening or anytime you want to have better energy production. Like for example, if you're an athlete, before you go on a run or a hockey match or soccer match or whatever you do sports wise, rub down with liquid magnesium. We call it magnesium oil. It's magnesium chloride. Rub it on.
Got it.
You'll have so much energy, you'll be shocked.
Nice.
And then before bedtime, take magnesium glycinate 308 or the topical again. Yeah, that chlorophyll is the most parasympathizing nutrient. So that's chlorella, alfalfa, barley juice, whatever else, all the grass
Hmm.
juices. They're great.
Very cool. We touched on a lot of cool
Mm,
things today, man. I really appreciate it. As we wrap things up, I wanna conclude talking about water. What are some of the best filters out there, and then how do you recommend that people
mm.
remineralize their water? Add
Yeah, right, right.
some salt or some sodium to get that hydration.
Hmm. Yeah. So you heard me talk about chlorine, get it out of the
And
water.
fluoride.
Glyphosate, get it out of the water. So filtration is required. If you want all of it out, reverse osmosis is damn good. It strips everything other than about 50 parts per million. Distilled water is usually down to maybe 5 parts per million, but this distilled water needs to be filtered. You need to actually filter it with carbon filter because it will bring some stuff with it. We have some inexpensive tools for people. We have something we called prills. It's magnesium oxide that will bind all kinds of things like chlorine, fluoride, arsenic, you name it. And that's an inexpensive thing, like $25 treats 1,000 gallons of water.
Oh, wow.
One other thing is the structuring. Water is creating latent liquid crystals. Water molecule is actually polar, HOH, hydroxyl and hydrogen. And so it has a plus end and minus end, and it forms these clusters. And harmonized water will make pretty clusters, like you see happy looking snowflakes. Whereas if it's badly treated water, it'll just go amorphous, ugly looking stuff. So you want to be, I don't know, sunlight, blue light, harmonizing. We sell these things. I have two gadgets here that I use. This one is a stack of ceramic pieces. I'm just trying to find a way where the light will not.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, it's a piece of ceramic loaded with special crystals, and when it's in water, it will structure the water. And this here little gizmo, that's a disc. Whatever you put on it, there's some spiral and magnets in it. Whatever you put on top of it will get harmonized. And by harmonized, we mean removing the bonds that the water has. When you strip out the bonds, the water goes unclustered and it will go inside your cells. This thing is called aquaporin channel. It's within your body, within your cells, and it's a tight spot through which water molecules has to get into your cell. And if it's clustered, it will not get in. It has to be unclustered to penetrate the tiny opening.
Wow.
Unclustered water, it's a big deal because when you hydrate at the cellular level, you bring nutrients in and toxins out. Better aquarium, healthier fish.
For sure. Well said, man. So Paul Chek is definitely onto something.
Oh yeah, Paul Chek is definitely onto something.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his. Martin, today was fun, man. I really am impressed with your wide array of knowledge. And like I said, we should do a whole episode just on water and kind of exploring
Sure,
the
happy to do it.
and reverse osmosis and the crystals. Like I definitely think there's a lot of knowledge to be explored in that arena.
Yeah, you asked what minerals. Yeah, we have mineral drops. There are several responsible manufacturers of trace minerals. You want to get magnesium and potassium and the trace minerals into your water. It's not hard to come by. We do have it on the site.
For sure. Man, that was a lot of fun. I just love that your frustration with conventional medicine and how it just focuses on like the symptom management rather than the root cause is just such an important part of the conversation. And you're taking action and creating systems and products and coaching to help lead people to a healthier life. So thank you for sharing with us a little peek behind that curtain.
Yeah, I feel hopeful that more people will wake up because the wakey signal is in our hands. In some ways, this COVID experience was the kick in the bum that so many people needed to wake up.
For sure.
So perhaps it's got its sunny side.
For sure.
We'll see.
Where can people find you, man?
Life-enthusiast.com.
Mm-hmm.
On Telegram, it's Life and Co, LIFENTCO. There's a channel on YouTube, Life and Co. There's a Rumble channel. It's called Life Enthusiast. There's an Instagram. The only place where you find me personally is Telegram.
Okay.
I just don't frequent, the people that betrayed me. I don't want to give them a lot of my time. I know that a lot of audience is there, but I'm not in love with their platforms.
Yeah, I definitely align with that for sure. That was a beautiful conversation. Thank you for your time, your energy. I look forward to chatting with you again. I'll be in touch with you so that we can share your products with our community and Definitely get in touch with some of that wormwood to remove some of the mercury that people are coming in contact with for sure.
Thank you. Thank you for spending the time.
That was fun.
Enjoy the
For
conversation.
those of you watching on YouTube or listening on Apple or Spotify, if you enjoyed my conversation with Martin Pytela, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt who you've not yet become. Until next time, guys.